So the other day, I turned 57. No big celebration. I don't normally celebrate birthdays, and I certainly haven't celebrated for a long time. And my wife came into my office and asked if I wanted to go for lunch, if she could take me out for lunch. And I reluctantly said, okay, sure, why not? It was nothing special and just like any other day, but it felt a little bit different turning 57 this year because I'm not much closer to 60. And that morning I had time to reflect and had a strange realization that it's almost been close to 40 years since I graduated from high school. And it made me ask the question that probably a lot of Gen Xers are asking themselves. And that is like, where did the time go? Like, wow, it just seemed like yesterday we were, running around the playground and just had all these big dreams about what we're going to do when we get out of school. So I started to reflect on my childhood and, wondered why time moved so slowly during that period. And I remember being in school, and I wasn't much of a school person. So I remember sitting in the classroom just staring at the clock, waiting for 3 o'clock to arrive so I can get out of school and go play with my friends. Or just remembering about August, just before the school year, my mom would take me down to the local Kmart to buy my school supplies. I was so excited to get that pencil case, the one that you could put your name in, the coloring pencils, and all the pencils. And I'll never forget the smell of the fresh binders we used to buy in for the new school year. I also remember like the bakeries in the supermarkets are a lot different than today. I just remember how frequent the pastries were. It had this really, really strong smell of freshness, which I don't see in a lot of supermarkets nowadays. I haven't seen it in a long time, and I don't know if it's just the processed food that they make now, but it was much different back then. And I also thought about the long bike rides I used to take with my friends, how we used to catch up with one another by just riding around, and if we didn't get a hold of them by phone and we were to catch up with them later, you always knew where they were because all the bicycles of your friends would be laying on the front lawn at your friend's house, so you knew they were all there. And just riding down to the creek to catch frogs or tadpoles. You had to be really creative those days because you didn't have the internet. So we had to go out and make our own fun. And even just going down to the old 7-Eleven after on a hot summer day, after a day riding bikes. And let's not forget the teenage years too, where we spent a lot of time at the arcades, the mall, walking around and just having fun, just being teenagers. And interesting enough, on my birthday, I was scrolling through my feed and something came up, and that was a news story about teenage nightclubs that were popping up in the 80s for teens who weren't of age to enter a alcoholic establishment. They would go to these teenage clubs to dance, and it's alcohol free. And I remember that trend back in the 80s. I totally forgot about it. And I remember my brother used to take the bus on the weekend to go to these teenage clubs, and they just had a great time. For myself, I didn't go because I was a naughty boy at the time and had a fake ID, so I would sneak into the adult clubs. I can't even believe that I wanted to be an adult so fast when I was a kid. Now, I wish I was a kid again. And I thought this interview was pretty cool, and I thought I'd share it with you right now. So check it out right here.
Although modeled after an adult club, this one is geared to teenagers, and it is squeaky clean.
It's tough to get into Shakers, but there are many who say it's worth the effort. They're all under 18, all under the drinking age, and all lining up 2 hours before the doors open.
It's great. It's for our age.
It is. It's totally cool.
Nowhere else to hang out. I need something to do in the West End because there's nothing to do except skating, and that's very boring.
Okay, guys, back it up.
A 6'10" bouncer keeps order.
The toughest part is just trying to get the fact to them that, you got to do exactly what we say or we're going to have a lot of problems. And you got to tell them about 10 times before they actually understand what you want them to do.
Okay, this for all of us? Everything you need in your jacket?
Yeah.
Everyone.
So after watching that, how did that make you feel? Do you remember those days when these teenage clubs popped up in your area? It's pretty fun. For my brother and all his friends. They still talk about till this day all the memories that they have going to those things. So when did this all shift? Like when did things start going faster for me? Well, after 50, it started to really speed up, and as I crossed 55, time really seemed to excel as I raced towards that 60 mark. And I'm trying to figure out a reason why that is. I've been grappling with this for a little bit, and probably, the thing I can nail it down to is we have the same routines, we have the same commute, we go to the same restaurants, and we just follow the same daily patterns. And for most of us, we've been doing it for a few decades, ever since we left school. And I think everything tends to blur together, and so we have less experiences, and that's when life seems to go really fast, and the years are shorter. And on top of this, as a Gen-Xer, we're dealing with a lot of other issues as well that come up. Our career, AI now. We're worried about ageism, being aged out of the workforce, and we're taking care of aging parents. And we have adult children, maybe taking care of grandkids, and also we have retirement planning. So sometimes, we focus so much on the financial aspect, wondering if we're going to have enough, and we also don't focus enough on what we're going to do in our retirement years, how we're going to plan our day, because all of a sudden, you're not working anymore, you got all this free time, and that seems to, kill a lot of people's spirit. My father, worked for a long time, and when he retired, he was bored out of his mind, and he's lost his purpose. And it just seems like he's waiting to just pass on. I mean, it's so you really have to think about that as well. And I think once I realized this, I remember back in December I visited a friend, and this is when it really hit home. Is he told me he had a stroke, and I thought to myself, wow, this guy I went to school with, I mean, we're older now, but we're not old. And I couldn't believe it. He told me his one side of his face was starting to droop. So he has to go get an MRI. And that's when it really hit me, along with my relatives passing the last few years, that time is so precious. And even my own health, as being a competitive martial artist, now when I train with the younger guys who are 20, 30 years old, I have a hard time keeping up with them. And I have more experience than them, but you just can't beat Father Time. And you have to come to a time when, the old lion has to give way to the new lion, the new young lion. And that's just part of life. And so I decided, that all the things I thought that mattered, money, status, success, that I spent years chasing, they weren't the most important thing. You know, the most important thing was my time. I mean, my wife came up to me the other day when I said, hey, hon, you know, let's travel. Think about taking early retirement. She's a few years younger than me, but she came to me and she says, you know what, we're running all the time, aren't we? And I pretend not to hear because I kind of wanted to ignore her. I didn't want to push her on the issue, but, you know, that kind of hit me to the core when she said that. And I didn't want to say, yeah, you're right, but a part of me is really saying, yeah, you are right. And I said, you know, we can't take our money and to work to the grave and to work a few more years for what? That's not going to make a difference. We don't know what's going to happen at 65. I mean, what if one of us gets sick? Then all the dreams that we had are going to be for naught. And so, you know, creating new experiences, relationships will slow time down again, right? Because that's what we did as kids, is we had so many new experiences every day, and when we become an adult and the older we get, we have less of these because we're so consumed by our daily responsibilities. So while I can't bring back my friends that pass or my family members who have passed, but I can still, you know, slow down time and make sure that the new experiences make the next 20 or so years exciting for me. So, you know, traveling to new places, learning new skills. I mean, I always want to learn a new language, and also, you know, maybe pick up a new hobby, maybe pickleball or I always loved dodgeball as a kid, so maybe I'll go back to playing that. Who knows? And meet new people along the way. So my thought is that we need to live more intentionally, and, you know, even though we love the 90s, we try to live in the present because that's what matters the most. And, you know, maybe the 80s were a long time ago, but, you know, it doesn't mean that the next 20 years can't become a meaningful part of our life as well. So tell me what you think. Comment below. And if you like my video, please feel free to like, share, and subscribe. And please feel free to check out the next one. All right. Take care. I'll talk to you later. Bye now.